Hi, my friends. It's Laura the Teach. This is the second lesson on basic comprehension. This is for students or children who are reading somewhat well, and we are going to read a story about penguins, actually, and try to answer some questions. Because I want to teach you that if you can't remember an answer, you can go back and look in the story to find the answer. Many times you'll be able to find your answer by doing that. So today's story is about penguins. And again, I'm using that Steck Vaughan comprehension series. I love the stories that are in these books. So we're going to read, and of course, this is for students that are probably reading at the first grade level, towards the beginning mid-level year. And we'll be reading this together. So when I point to the words, I want you to read along with me. Look at this animal. Its feathers look like a black and white suit. It walks on 2 feet. It has a bill, which is another word for its beak. It cannot fly, but it swims. Its flippers help it swim. So they don't call it wings, they call them flippers. It is a penguin, a bird that lives on ice. So we find penguins at the South Pole. Unfortunately, they are a polar bear's favorite snack, as well as orcas or killer whales. It was a dark, cold winter day. Many penguins left the water and met on the ice. The penguins made a lot of noise. They called to each other. Now, this story has some truth to it, but some of it is make-believe, because the penguins don't call themselves Mr. and Mrs. Penguin, but this story does. So this story is somewhat true, but also not real in some cases. Mr. Penguin called to Mrs. Penguin. Now we know that we wouldn't call it Mr. and Mrs. Penguin, but in this story it is. Mrs. Penguin heard his voice. They met and walked. After several days, Mrs. Penguin laid 1 egg on the ice. It was time to make a nest for the baby penguin egg. Now, penguins are interesting birds because, no, they can't fly. They're excellent swimmers, but penguins mate or they pair up for life. So if one penguin meets another penguin, they are partners until they die. And so, or one of them does. And so another interesting fact about penguins is when the female penguin lays the egg, she then goes out to the water for months and eats and eats and eats. The male penguin keeps the egg on his feet. Now, penguins have big bellies, and so they put the egg on their feet and they cover the egg with their big fat belly. And it's got all kinds of downy feathers, and it keeps the egg warm. They don't sit on nests like a lot of birds do. So it's very interesting. Let's see what else it says. Mr. Penguin rolled the egg onto his 2 feet. His stomach feathers covered the egg and kept it warm. Soon Mrs. Penguin called, "Goodbye." She and the other mother penguins went into the sea. they went to eat fish. So the penguins go out for months, and the father penguins lay the eggs. The dads stayed on the ice to care for the eggs. They kept the eggs warm for many weeks. They ate nothing. So the male penguins don't eat anything. They're pretty hungry. They got very skinny. And just about the time they're getting so thin, then something exciting happens. One day, the father penguins were talking. Where are the mothers? One penguin asked. It's time for the eggs to open. Another penguin said, I hope they are safe, because remember, whales and polar bears are always hunting penguins to eat. Surprise! The next day, the eggs started to open, or hatch, we call that. The little baby penguins began to make noise. The dads were happy. But where were the mother penguins? So shortly after the eggs hatch, the mother penguins have an instinct, and they just know when to return. So they will return, but right now the eggs are starting to hatch. What I'd like you to do is stop the video and look at the words in the story and go through and try to read some of these words on your own. While you do that though, okay, when you turn the video back on, we're going to go over some questions next. So these questions will talk about what you learned in the story. And if you can't remember the answer, you can go back to the story and find it. That's what we do when we don't know an answer. We go back. So it gives us 3 choices for every question. It says, where did Mr. Penguin keep his egg? Now your choices are in the mud, on his feet, on his bill. Now if you can't remember, you can go back to the story and look at it, and oh, look at the picture right there. Tells you where he kept the egg. Where is that? You're right, on his feet. So our choice would be the second one, on his feet. The next question says, when did the mother penguins go away? Now remember, they said goodbye after they did something. Our choices tell us after the babies came out of the eggs. Now think back to the story. Did the babies come out when the moms were there? No, because the fathers were saying, where are the mothers? We have before they laid the eggs. Did the mothers say, see ya, before an egg was laid? Or after they laid the eggs? So if we go back and we look at the story, if you can't remember, it says, after several days, Mrs. Penguin laid 1 egg on the ice, and then Mr. Penguin rolled the egg onto his feet. So, which answer would be the one that we would use? You're correct. After they laid the eggs. Good. So if you don't know an answer, go back and look. While the father penguins held their eggs, when did they eat? Now, I remember a line in the story that talked about how they were feeling, and they got really thin. Why did they get so thin? Good thinking, because they hadn't eaten. So they couldn't eat while they were holding the eggs. Let's see what our choices are. When did they get to eat? When it was dark? Never. Or when they had an egg sitter? Do penguins have egg sitters like you have a babysitter? Did it talk about that in the story? No. When did it say the fathers ate? Now, it didn't come right out and say one of our choices, but it says here, they ate nothing. So what would that be? If they ate nothing, did they eat when it was dark? Never. Or when they had an egg sitter? Good job. Never. They never ate. That's why they got so thin. Where were the mother penguins? When the mother penguin said, see ya, where did it say they went? Let's look at our choices. Were they getting food from the sea? Were they getting skinny like the father penguins? Or were they at the store getting food? What store is in the South Pole? Which one makes the most sense? If you can't remember, again, go back to your story. And she says, goodbye. She and the other mother penguins went into the sea. They went to eat fish. So which would be the correct answer? Getting food from the sea. You're correct. And our last question, what is a good name for this story? Now, when you're deciding on a good name, you want to think about what the story talked about the most. So, a funny nest. What would the nest be in this story? Think about it. It would be the father penguin's feet. A nest in a tree? Did these penguins have trees? No. Mother penguin sits on the eggs. Did the mother sit on the egg? No. So we know that a nest in a tree, isn't the right answer. And we know mother penguin didn't sit on the eggs. So sometimes we can find an answer by getting rid of the ones that we know aren't the answer. A funny nest, which was the father penguin's feet. So you did a good job today. I want you to go back and read the words in that story and then answer those questions again. And remember, if you can't remember, go back and look at the story and figure out what the answer is. Or get rid of the answers you know couldn't be the right answer and see what you have left. Great job, everyone.